Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. Around here we call him Mr. Elections, plus a little understanding. And he's got the rundown.
Sam, the election may be over, but it just keeps going on and on. Today we talk to Secretary of State Dean Heller and find out what's next. And then we talk to Scott Craigie. He was the architect for the doctors that pushed through ballot question 3 and helped fight ballot questions 4 and 5. We'll get some follow-up from him. Sam?
And coming up on the Power Pundit panel today, Mary Lau, Martha Gould, and Dick Gammick. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
If you own a business and want to maximize your company's potential, join the Retail Association of Nevada. Our membership benefits include the Nevada Retail Network Self-Insured Group, providing workers' compensation coverage that can lower your rates. That savings can go directly to your bottom line. We are an effective pro-business organization that lobbies on behalf of our business members. The Retail Association of Nevada, protecting Nevada businesses for 35 years.
When you need a new employee, how can you be sure who you're really hiring? A background investigation by Employer Links will uncover criminal records, verify the applicant's education, check their credit history and Social Security verification. An investigation will research professional licenses and driver's licenses and let you know why they're unemployed. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
So, who do you use for workers' comp?
Pro Group Management.
Ah, I've heard some good things about them.
You bet. Employee background checks, safety training, claim seminars. Oh, and here's the great part. If you have an issue, they work for you, not against you.
Sounds perfect. And expensive.
Well, that's the best part. They saved me 30%. I've heard they've saved others 50%.
Works for me. Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
It's the next best thing to having your own wine cellar. Come to the Bonanza Casino for a first and fine dining, reasonably priced wines. When you dine at Cactus Creek Southwestern Steakhouse, you can also enjoy a fine bottle of wine at just about the same price you'd pay at the Vineyard, Silver Oak, Robert Mondavi, Rombauer, Cakebread, Jordan, and Duckhorn, just to name a few. And at the lowest prices of any restaurant or casino in Northern Nevada. And remember, all fine wines are not in wine cellars. They're in the Cactus Creek at the Bonanza Casino where locals come to play.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, political analyst Ande Engleman, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers Broadcast Center, here is Sam Shad.
And we're joined by Secretary of State Dean Heller. Welcome to the program. Obviously, you survived the election.
I did. Got a couple good nights' sleep.
All right, now, what was our turnout rate?
Close to 80%, just under 80%. Frankly, if Washoe County would have done better than whatever they did, 63, 65%, I think we would have topped 80%.
Where'd that put us nationally?
You know, I don't have an answer for that yet. I don't think that's been analyzed.
I think we're in the top 10.
I think there's still some states that aren't done counting, so we'll wait for another week or so.
Those provisional ballots or absentee ballots?
Probably both.
Okay, we did run into some problems with this election. Not many. The machines worked great. Everybody I talked to loved the machines. You loved the machines?
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody loved the machines. All right, so where do we go from here? What do we do to ensure that we have a more trustworthy election in the future?
Well, the first thing that you have to do is you got to go after the issues of fraud. If there's a concern for fraud out there that needs to be addressed, and frankly, there's answers. Now, we just talked about the machines. My concern is that because we were so successful in this election with the machines and the processes, that we take it over to the legislature and they're going to say, hey, there's no problems here in Nevada and we're not going to make any major changes to address some of these fraud issues. For example, I don't think that the paper on these machines would have ever been added if you had to get the approval from the legislature. As popular as it was, I don't think the legislature would approve the paper trail to the electronic voting machines.
What do you want to see the legislature approve?
Well, if you want to discuss some of the issues dealing with throwing out some of the registration forms. And this is an issue that I brought before the legislature several times. We've had 6,000 provisional ballots that were cast in this election cycle. I'm guaranteeing a majority of those are going to be thrown out. Why wouldn't we allow individuals just to register to vote at the time if they've gone through the effort of going to a polling place?
Same day, election day registration.
Yes, election day registration, so that their vote actually counts. For them to go through all that effort and then essentially throw the majority of them out truly doesn't make any sense.
Okay, but what about fake IDs, for example?
Well,
that's right away one of my concerns about the same-day registration.
Well, who's going to go through all that process? I mean, I think that's that
District Attorney Dick Gammick will be on the program a little later on. Maybe we can ask him that.
But where are we going to err? Where are we going to err? Are we going to err on the side of getting more people to register to vote, or worry about the one or two people that may have a fake ID?
Well, Dean, I might feel better about this if once we get the computerized registration system, where people can put a name into the computer and say, hey, you're already registered in Lander County.
Right.
Now
Absolutely.
you want to come here and vote.
That will be in place. That will be in place by January 1st, 2006. Working on it as we speak, probably let out a contract in the next 3 weeks for a statewide voter registration system. Those are the two things that need to be in place to avoid the fraud in this state. I don't think the legislature is going to move in that direction. So the statewide voter registration system will be in place because we can do that without the approval of the legislature, but the same-day voter registration, where we could literally add 10% more to our voting rolls on election day,
I still have concerns.
I think that's the direction you need to go to avoid all these people, 1,500 people, whatever, 6,000 provisional ballots, half of them getting thrown out. You want to disenfranchise this group?
No, but I want to make sure somebody's a legal citizen or is legally able to vote.
They'd be required to show
And what
ID.
kind of staffing would you have to increase? I mean, at my polling place, you went in and you got your card, then you had to go back outside again and line up again.
So
you had to
we're
go
worried
back
about
in and
cost
vote.
at this point? I mean, we're talking about democracy.
I
we're
think,
worried about cost, how much it's going to cost to run a good election.
You know something? I thought you were a Republican. I thought you were fiscally conservative. Yes, of course people worry about cost.
I think there's 6,000, 10,000 people out there that would love to have voted in this election cycle that we disenfranchised because the processes weren't in place to allow them to vote.
And I've got to tell you, Sam, that I think Washoe County needs some correcting, because in other counties, people didn't have to go through what they went through in Washoe County.
And we ought to discuss that for a minute, too, because I'm getting a lot of blames for some of the long lines. As you know, I don't allocate, Andy, where these voting machines go.
Right.
Two things happen in Washoe County different than other places. One, the allocation of voting machines in Washoe County is the same as Clark, same as Carson, same as Douglas. They didn't have the long lines. I think you have to allocate where the machines were the heaviest voter, anticipate the heaviest voter turnout areas. And second, you need to push early voting. Clark County gets over 50% of the people participating in early voter and absentee voting. It's not even half that here in Washoe County. So you're going to have a heavy turnout on election day. If we push the early voting, you don't have nearly the problems on election day.
Now, who's responsible for purchasing these voting machines? Does that come through your office? And,
I purchased the machines.
And will we see more?
Yes, I purchased the machines at the request. The numbers was at the request of the registrars and clerks themselves. They told me how many machines they needed. So I purchased the amount of machines that they wanted. So in the future, as we continue to grow, now we won't see the same problem 2 years from now because it'll be a non-presidential year. Turnout will be reduced by 10 to 15%. But 4 years from now, yes, we're going to have very similar problems if we're not pushing early votings and if we're not allocating the machines correctly.
But aren't you excited about democracy in action? The fact that we have these problems is because so many people want to turn out to vote.
Absolutely.
And that your own prediction of 75% was busted?
Right. Well, record registration, record turnout. I mean, there's going to be a bunch of proposals now in front of the legislature. Even the registrar of Clark County is saying maybe we should quit paying people to register people to vote. If we do that, if we had done that during the last legislative session, you wouldn't seen the record increase of voter registration and an additional 250,000 people registered to vote for this particular election. There's no incentive. If we take out all the incentive, we won't see this kind of action and this kind of democracy in action.
Well, maybe the incentive is two candidates battling it out.
Different subject.
Yes.
If the governor calls a special session, you have to swear in the legislators.
I do.
You have not been notified yet of when to do that. Okay.
All right, and we're out of time.
All right.
Always a pleasure to have you here,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Secretary. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by Sunbelt Communication.
The Aboud family has an appetite for dialogue. Agree or disagree, have the conversation. All opinions are welcome. Since 1977, Adele's.
When he was just a young boy, Ken Dillon laid back, looked up at the stars, and thought to himself, hey, this house could use a roof. Today, Ken Dillon's D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal offers a complete line of elk roofing products for any type of residential roof. With an elk roof from D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal, what's overhead stays overhead. Call Ken Dillon's D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal today for a free estimate. Yes, the technology sure has changed, but after all these years, Ken still enjoys playing with houses.
When your finances are managed, you're free to do. Annuities, almost CD, IRAs, mutual funds. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
EDON and Northern Nevada Development Authority host the 20th Annual Governor's Industry Appreciation Awards, Tuesday, November 9th, 2004 at 5:30 p.m. at John Esquaga's Nugget, honoring new Northern Nevada businesses and existing businesses that have recently expanded. Keynote speaker, Jeff Finkel, President and CEO of the International Economic Development Council, will present the election's effect on economic development. For tickets and more information, call 829-3700 or visit www.edon.org.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad and Ande Engleman.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're joined by Scott Craigie, president of Alrus Consulting. You have been a busy man these last few months.
Yes.
And you lived.
Do I look older? Lord knows I feel it.
Okay, very interesting ballot questions. And to refresh everyone's memory, ballot question 3 amended state law to remove exceptions in tort reform as far as medical malpractice.
Correct.
And ballot questions 4 and 5 were actually questions put on the ballot by the trial lawyers that would have weakened what ballot question 3.
In fact, would have totally unraveled them. The really interesting thing is that, when people went into the ballot questions, which are, much further down in the on the election ballot, most people stayed on the ballot and continued to vote. Over 90% of the people that voted in the presidential race cast ballots throughout the first 6 of the ballot questions.
Scott, don't you think some of that has to do with these machines? Because if you skip something on the ballot, the machine comes up and says, oh, you didn't vote for this or that. Don't you want to vote for this or that?
Well, if that's what it is, good for the machines, because even when people went through and voted on all of these, they didn't vote a party line. They didn't stay to what you might consider the stereotypical interests that Republicans or Democrats would have. People went through questions 3, 4, and 5, voting what most people would consider a fairly conservative, direction. In large numbers, they voted for 3 and against 4 and 5. The logic of those 3 questions, and those that voted no on 3 voted yes on the logic for their side. And then immediately after coming out of there, they voted in huge numbers for an increase in the minimum wage.
But see,
so it's not like it was Democrats voting for Democrat issues, Republicans for Republican issues. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I believe the unions and other people sent people to the polls to vote for ballot question 6 and said, we need to get out the vote on this and vote for hiking the minimum wage.
And they may have, but the fact of the matter is, over 90% of the people that voted in the presidential race, which means many Republicans as well as many Democrats, stayed and voted on minimum wage in huge numbers, overwhelming numbers.
Well, I think Andy has a very good point about the fact that the computer actually forces you to do that, and I hadn't thought about that before.
I hadn't either.
Let me ask you this, to put yourself, to view the other side. What was the biggest mistake that the trial lawyers made?
Well, they split their focus. They did some television spots, in favor of 4 and 5, which is what they needed, and then they pulled off of those for a while, and then they jumped onto a no on 3 campaign for a while, and then they came off the air there. To an extent, they didn't, at least as the rules go for doing political campaigns, they didn't stay consistent. They had a consistent message when they started out. They didn't stay with it through the campaign. I think that hurt them a lot.
Well, I think it hurt them that they didn't come on this show for so long, Sam, and answer the tough questions that we had. And then when they did send somebody up, she just stonewalled. She really wouldn't answer the questions. She'd just say, no, you're wrong, And then they attacked the Secretary of State, who's then put in the position of criticizing the lawyers. I mean, it was just one disaster after the other.
What surprised you in Nevada as far as the election went?
Well, you know, talking about what's happening right now, I was very surprised that so many people stayed into the ballot questions, which reinforces the theory that a lot of people have, and this scares me. I mean, you know, we all know I worked on 4 of the ballot questions, 1, 3, 4, and 5. And even though I worked on those, they scare me. They're big bets, they're big gambles. And
explain that.
Well, the problem is that we put these major policy issues on ballot questions, and if you lose, you set a tone for many, many years. I would lose sleep at night if we had lost 4 and 5, that we would have created a state set of statutes that would have been devastating in its impact on the economy. I believe that we would have damaged the entire growth engine. And I'm not campaigning now. I recognize the risk, the gamble that is in these questions. People make good decisions. You look at questions 1 and 2. You know, there was a huge differentiation between question 1 passed by a huge margin, question 2 failed. So people looked at education and they did discern a difference and made a policy choice. So they go into these more seriously than maybe people would think, especially if they're being maybe pressed to vote when they haven't studied. But they did study. So on that level it's good, but boy, the risk of putting all these policy issues on, and especially for some groups that I see that do this to turn out voters, a certain set of voters, that's a horrible risk because we're gambling policy against voter turnout, and that's not productive for the state in the long run.
Don't you think this show made a difference?
I think this show, you know what, I will tell you honestly.
I will put this into our advertising material.
I will tell you, we came to this show early. We called and asked the guests be on. Actually, you started out with people who were totally nonpartisan. You had the Secretary of State people on and others talking about what the content was, which was helpful because we believed that as people saw that there was a hidden message in 4 and 5, it would help us. But we needed to talk to opinion leaders first before we could advertise to the general public, because that's the only way you win these. And so we came to this show and others like it, but this show was one of the most important for us in the campaign strategy, so that we could get to opinion leaders and have them see at least and then judge for themselves. You can't turn these people just based on talk.
See, I believe that the public voted more intelligently because they were better informed, and I think we contributed to that, Sam. I know that was our goal.
And you know, I'm going to keep my head the same size, and I'm just going to thank you and then ask you, what did you think briefly of the presidential election?
You know, the presidential election was what it was. It was one of the very most divisive presidential election cycles that I can remember. I think it was one of the most defining moments since Kennedy-Nixon. It truly is one of those races that you just, you know is going to make a huge difference. Unfortunately for Nevada, I think that the fact that we made Yucca Mountain a litmus test for the presidential race, and Kerry not only lost the election, but Kerry lost Nevada. I think on Yucca Mountain we sent a signal that that wasn't helpful to us.
And we're out of time. Scott Craigie, always a pleasure. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
If you own a business and want to maximize your company's potential, join the Retail Association of Nevada. Our membership benefits include the Nevada Retail Network Self-Insured Group, providing workers' compensation coverage that can lower your rates. That savings can go directly to your bottom line. We are an effective pro-business organization that lobbies on behalf of our business members. The Retail Association of Nevada, protecting Nevada businesses for 35 years.
When you need a new employee, how can you be sure who you're really hiring? A background investigation by Employer Links will uncover criminal records, verify the applicant's education, check their credit history and Social Security verification. An investigation will research professional licenses and driver's licenses and let you know why they're unemployed. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
I tell you, John, this industry has really changed.
Tell me about it.
You seemed to do pretty well last year. What's your secret?
No secrets. Although I'll tell you something. The smartest thing I did was sign up with Pro Group Management.
Really? Yeah, they do workers' comp, right?
Yeah, their services are great. And get this, they saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
That works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
Are you ready to experience Reno's ultimate lobster buffet? Then bring your appetite to the El Dorado, where we're serving a half-pound of slipper lobster tail for just $5 with the purchase of a dinner buffet. Catch it every night of the week. Are you in?
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad and Ande Engleman.
Well, we have a messy desk, but a fine pundit panel. Joining us on the Power Pundit panel today, Mary Lau, Executive Director of the Retail Association of Nevada, one of our proud sponsors, Washoe County District Attorney Dick Gammick, and Martha Gould, a Washoe County Democrat. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
You want to jump in?
Okay. At least as of time we're taping this, the governor is still deciding whether or not to call a special session to proceed with the possible impeachment of Kathy Augustine, Controller, because of the fact that her attorney, who's very bright, Dominic Gentile, brought up a lot of issues about the Attorney General being conflicted and not being able to prosecute this case, since he also, and I'm simplifying this greatly, okay? So, which raises a number of questions. First of all, should the state be putting out money for a special prosecutor and a special session? If they don't prosecute, if they don't impeach Kathy Augustine with even the things she's admitted to, what kind of a message does that send to the public? What kind of a message does it send to elected officials about using state employees for their own gain?
And if you're asking me, we've gone so far down the line now, I'm not sure how they cannot call the special session and do it, because Kathy's obviously not going to budge, and she's not going to resign even for the good of the state. It's gone so far. But I've had a lot of people who aren't involved in the political arena, because we've talked to so many people during the election cycle, and they're saying she's already paid a fine of $15,000.
Well,
so where do we go from there?
She's paying it $500 a month.
Yeah.
She hasn't paid it
Yeah, she
yet.
was assessed a fine, I guess is a good way to put it.
Right.
So some of the electorate or some of the constituents out there are saying, you know, she's paid a fine, so where do we go from here? But it's to observe this and to watch it go, it's a great case of chicken to see who's going to blink first.
Right.
Where do you think the blinking comes?
It's either the governor or Kathy. One or the other's got to go. I mean, you cannot back away from this.
Dick, you're a
now.
law enforcement person?
Well, I don't think the governor's going to back up at all, and I've had a tough time all along. If Kathy wanted to fight this, I don't know why she didn't fight it coming out of the gate instead of admitting everything and now setting her heels. I mean, and what legislator is going to vote not to impeach her since all this has happened? I see this as an exercise in futility. As far as the Attorney General is concerned, we deal with this all the time. I don't know the extent that his people have been involved with each other within the office, or who knows what, or anything else, and all that's going to have to come out in the wash, and whether or not he's got people that can go ahead and prosecute it who haven't been involved in another aspect of it. And we deal with it all the time.
Didn't he on this show say that he would probably have to assign a special, get a special prosecutor?
He may have to do that. I don't know.
It is going to cost the taxpayers an awful lot of money, and we have problems facing the state that are frankly more important than whether or not Kathy Augustine is impeached. I mean, if I were Kathy Augustine, I would gracefully back out and leave the state.
Yeah,
but
go
that's
hide
not
in Peoria.
going to happen.
Yeah.
Dick, you're a defender of the system. What does it say when employees go to personnel and say, my boss is making me do her campaign stuff in the office, and the state personnel people say, that's okay, that's their right, when clearly there's a law against it?
No, that all comes under whistleblower statutes and protection of people when they turn folks over for doing bad things. This is a very, very tender area. I'll tell you, very touchy area, because as you know, I run for election too, and you got to make sure your people understand. If you want to help me, that's great, but it's going to be away from here, off duty, and if you don't want to help me, my hands are completely off of it, and they need to absolutely understand that. And I make sure I have some of my folks do help me, a lot of them don't, and that's fine. That's their call.
I'd like to move things to the world stage a little bit here. News reports this morning coming from Paris that Yasser Arafat is being removed from life support. Martha, could this be the beginning of the first chance for a real peace in the Middle East since 1948?
I would like to think so, but the truth of the matter is there are hardliners on both sides. A zealot is a zealot, period, the end. And I'm not sure at this point in terms of the Palestinian Authority, that they have anyone strong enough in leadership to stop the terrorism. And I'm not sure you can do it in terms of the hardliners in the Israeli government. I would like to think it would be the beginning, but I guess I would say I'm cautiously optimistic.
I agree with Martha in the respect, except
You agree with me?
Yeah, a shocker for you. Write today's date down. Except I'll even take it a step further. I don't think you can stop the terrorists. There's only one way to stop them, and that's when they're ultimately dead, because they are so ingrained from the time they're young people until they're all the way through adults, until they do their mass bombings and everything else. I don't think you're going to stop them. I don't think the leader's strong enough to do it.
You teach people to hate, and it goes from generation to generation, and you're right.
Yeah.
Turning that around is perhaps not possible.
Mary, want to have the last word?
Well, turning it around is generational, and Arafat, as we all do, as we get older, we get less excitable and everything, and he's been, I think the image of Arafat and everything else, he's even held back some of his people from that. And now there's going to be a leadership vacuum. I think it'll be, for a while, more trouble.
In the world calendar. We don't have time. We're out of time. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmaker after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
The Aboud family has an appetite for dialogue. Agree or disagree, have the conversation. All opinions are welcome. Since 1977, Adele's.
When he was just a young boy, Ken Dillon laid back, looked up at the stars, and thought to himself, hey, this house could use a roof. Today, Ken Dillon's D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal offers a complete line of elk roofing products for any type of residential roof. With an elk roof from D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal, what's overhead stays overhead. Call Ken Dillon's D&D Roofing and Sheet Metal today for a free estimate. Yes, the technology sure has changed, but after all these years, Ken still enjoys playing with houses.
When your finances are managed, you're free to do. Annuities, almost CD, IRAs, mutual funds. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
EDON and Northern Nevada Development Authority host the 20th Annual Governor's Industry Appreciation Awards, Tuesday, November 9th, 2004 at 5:30 p.m. at John Esquaga's Nugget, honoring new Northern Nevada businesses and existing businesses that have recently expanded. Keynote speaker Jeff Finkel, President and CEO of the International Economic Development Council, will present the election's effect on economic development. For tickets and more information, call 829-3700 or visit www.edon.org.
And coming up tomorrow,
John L. Smith and George Harris in defense of Kathy Augustine.
That should be interesting. We'll see you tomorrow.